Welcome back to part 2 of this series. Today, the cross is one of the most recognizable symbols in the world. It appears on church buildings. People wear it as jewelry. It represents faith and hope. But when Jesus Christ spoke about the cross, it meant something entirely different. When Jesus said, "Whoever does not take up their cross and follow me is not worthy of me," his audience did not think of a religious symbol. They thought of execution. They thought of Roman crucifixion. So what did Jesus mean when he told people to take up their cross? To understand this statement, we must explore the historical reality of the cross, the moment in Jesus' ministry, and the theological meaning behind his words. In the first century, crucifixion was one of the most brutal forms of execution used by the Roman Empire. It was reserved for slaves, rebels, enemies of the state. The purpose of crucifixion was not simply death. It was public humiliation and deterrence. Victims were often forced to carry the crossbeam of their own cross through the streets to the place of execution. This procession served as a warning to everyone watching. It said, "This is what happens to those who challenge Roman authority." So when Jesus spoke about carrying a cross, the image was unmistakable. It meant walking toward suffering and death. This is why his words shocked his listeners. For no rabbi had ever called people to follow him in this way. The statement about taking up the cross appears shortly after Peter's confession that Jesus is the Messiah. But immediately after that moment, Jesus tells the disciples something unexpected. He explains that he must suffer, be rejected, and be killed. This was not the kind of Messiah the disciples expected. They imagined a king who would defeat Rome. But Jesus spoke about a servant who would suffer, and then he extended that same path to his followers. To follow Jesus was not simply to admire him. It was to walk the same road of faithfulness and sacrifice. When Jesus said, "Take up your cross," he was describing a posture of total commitment. It meant a willingness to remain faithful to God even when it is costly. It meant placing loyalty to Christ above comfort, reputation, security, even life itself. In the early church, many believers understood these words literally. Following Christ sometimes led to persecution. Yet they saw suffering not as defeat, but as participation in the mission of Christ. The cross reveals a profound truth about the nature of God's kingdom. In most human systems, power is expressed through dominance and control. But in the teaching of Jesus Christ, true greatness is revealed through sacrifice and service. The cross represents the ultimate expression of love and obedience. It shows that redemption comes not through force, but through self-giving love. For this reason, the early Christians saw the cross not only as an instrument of death, but as the place where God's saving work was revealed. Today, most followers of Christ will never face literal crucifixion. But the principle behind Jesus' words remains. Taking up the cross may involve standing for truth when it is unpopular, choosing integrity when compromise would be easier, serving others when self-interest would be more comfortable. In every generation, the call of Jesus invites believers to live with a different set of priorities, not centered on self-preservation, but on faithfulness to God's purposes. The words of Jesus Christ remain as challenging today as they were 2,000 years ago. Take up your cross and follow me. It is not a call to suffering for its own sake. It is an invitation to a life of devotion, courage, and sacrificial love. And in the paradox of the gospel, the path that looks like loss often becomes the path that leads to true life. And so, my friends, what do you think it means to take up your cross in today's world? Share your thoughts in the comments. Thanks for joining me today. If this message encouraged you, don't forget to like, subscribe, share with someone who needs hope today. And always remember that faith has never been reasonable in the eyes of the world, but God has always honored obedience. This channel is dedicated to biblical teaching that challenges comfortable Christianity and calls believers to walk by faith, not by sight.